So, you've probably seen the headlines about Zillow's recent layoffs. And at first glance, it looks like the same old story, right? Another tech company just tightening its belt. But when you really start to dig in, the story gets way more interesting because what seems like a simple staff cut might actually be a clue to a much bigger shift in how these companies are thinking. Let's break it down.
Okay, so here's the news that kicked this whole thing off. Zillow, a name everyone in real estate knows, confirmed they were letting 200 employees go. In today's tech world, which is already pretty nervous about layoffs, this kind of news definitely makes a splash.
But hold on, because this is where things get weird. Your first thought is probably, okay, a real estate company is cutting jobs, the market must be tough. Except Zillow is going on the record saying that's not the reason at all. So, if it's not the market, what is really going on here? That's the billion-dollar question. All right, so let's dig into the specifics here, the actual numbers, and what this announcement really looked like.
The number we're talking about is 200 people. And for those 200 individuals and their families, that is a huge, life-changing event. No question about it.
But, to understand it from Zillow's perspective, you gotta have some context. Those 200 jobs, that's only about 2% of their entire workforce. It's a pretty small number, which honestly makes their official reason for it all the more fascinating.
So, what did Zillow say? Let's take a look at the company side of the story. I mean, your brain immediately goes to the housing market, right? The economy. For a company like Zillow, it's the most obvious, logical explanation for cutting jobs.
Yeah, except here's the curveball. This is a direct quote from a Zillow spokesperson. They went out of their way to say this is not connected to the market. That just completely flips the script on what everyone was assuming.
So, here's their official line. These are not layoffs in the traditional sense. They're performance-related reductions. They're framing this as just business as usual, part of a yearly review to weed out underperformers. Seems clean and simple enough, on the surface. But you gotta remember, no company exists in a vacuum. And when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture in Seattle's tech scene, where Zillow is headquartered, their whole performance explanation starts to look, well, a little convenient. Because let's be real, Zillow's cuts didn't happen in isolation. They happened smack dab in the middle of a huge wave of layoffs that's been sweeping across the entire tech industry in that area. And we're talking about the biggest names out there. Amazon with a massive 16,000 corporate cuts. Meta and Expedia are also trimming down. So when Zillow makes cuts at the exact same time, but claims it's for a completely different reason, yeah, it makes you raise an eyebrow, doesn't it? Okay, so Zillow says this isn't about the market, even though their tech neighbors are all feeling the pinch. So how is Zillow actually doing? And this, folks, is where the story gets really juicy and honestly a little confusing.
So you've got this major puzzle. On one side, you've got the layoffs, which totally fit this worrying regional trend. But on the other side, when you look at their actual numbers, you see a company that seems to be absolutely crushing it. Let's just start with their revenue. In the last quarter, Zillow brought in $676 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That does not scream company in trouble, does it? And that huge number isn't just a one-time thing. It's actually up a whopping 16% compared to the same time last year. I mean, in today's economy, that kind of growth is just bonkers.
Okay, so they're making money, but are people still using Zillow? Oh yeah. They are pulling in 250 million unique users every single month. That is a gigantic, super engaged audience. And that audience is still growing. Traffic to their apps and websites is up 7% from last year. So let's just recap here for a second. By every important metric, revenue, users, growth, Zillow isn't just getting by, it looks like it's firing on all cylinders. So we've got layoffs on one hand and absolutely stellar performance on the other. What in the world is going on here? Let's try to connect these dots and make sense of it. Okay, when you put it all together, there are really only two ways to look at this. Option one, we take Zillow at their word. This is just a routine, by-the-book performance review. No big deal. Option two, the more skeptical take. This is a classic case of quiet caution. They're using performance as the perfect cover story to trim the fat and cut costs now, just in case those great numbers don't last forever. So what should we take away from all this? Well, first, it's a huge reminder that layoffs don't always mean a company is sinking. Second, you have to weigh what a company says against what's happening in the world around it. And this leads to the biggest idea.
Maybe we're seeing a whole new playbook emerge, where even successful companies use performance reviews as a strategic way to stay lean, mean, and ready for anything.
Which brings us right back to that big question. Was this just business as usual for Zillow? Some simple corporate housekeeping? Or was it a calculated move, a sign of quiet caution for a future that's still uncertain? The real answer is probably somewhere in the middle, and it really shows you just how complex and forward-thinking companies have to be in the crazy tech world we're in now.